I think I'm going to call it dark incel energy. If it is talked about, it's talked about in a derisory manner where people generally just make fun of these people on the internet, because I definitely identify with parallels of it. I think there's extremes of being an incel. You think of the incel on one end of the spectrum, that is the man that has never had sex, that literally cannot get a woman, not as, attractive as what conventional Western standards of attractiveness are. And then there's probably the guys that are, somewhere in the middle where they can get women, but it's more difficult for them. And I definitely identify with that kind of struggle. I've made, lots of videos on this topic, how I found it difficult to find someone. But I think men and women deal with this in different ways. I think for men, they tend to go down the extreme of, we've seen like the mass shootings in America. Or if the men aren't going that extreme, then they fall into the online forums that we see, where instead of men helping other men, it's bringing other women down. And that's kind of the plight they fall into. I kind of noticed, particularly during the pandemic and that time when I had a lot of time alone, that I was falling almost into this dark incel energy where I believed I couldn't find anyone, and I was seeing parallels with that behaviour in terms of I was falling into a depression, really, falling into self-loathing and self-hatred because I wasn't finding success with the opposite sex, and I was turning a lot of that inward. Men will respond to this by going on forums and seeking advice. I was going on YouTube. I don't really do the whole forum thing, but I was going on YouTube, trying to find advice, getting into this rabbit hole of literally just trying to find out what was wrong with me, and like getting sucked deeper and deeper into being an incel. I think for women it's definitely different. I think women tend to deal with it differently. The majority of women have more female friendships that they can lean on, and it is in some ways easier for women to be single. But during the pandemic I didn't have that. I'm talking like a couple of years ago when I used to watch red pill content because I was generally interested in what men think, and I was like, what are men thinking? I was watching a lot of red pill content and getting sucked into this self-loathing energy and putting it back on myself as what's wrong with me, why can't I find someone. I think for women, even though people don't really talk about the female kind of incel, because people always say, well, females can get sex, but the truth is that females can't get the sex that they want. It's more difficult for females to get the loving and secure sex. A lot of females, they don't want the Tinder sex. They don't want the one night stand. They want a loving, committed relationship. Women tend to go two ways. A lot of women, they tend to get sucked in either the friends with benefits situation where they're not really getting their needs met, but they're getting some kind of attention. Or they do what I did, where they just completely shut themselves off completely and think, well, I can't find anyone that wants to have a loving and successful relationship, so I'm just not going to have sex at all. And in that aspect, I guess I was an incel because I wasn't having sex. And I still felt like an incel because I was involuntary celibate. I wanted to have sex, but I couldn't find the sex that I wanted. So in a way of dealing with that, that's when I was falling into this dark energy. And if you see some of my videos are really angry and they're like really dark. And it's generally because I didn't have that loving connection in my life. And I can genuinely identify with incels. And some people might sit here and think, well, you're attractive, you can find someone. But like I said before, it's difficult to kind of find the sex in a loving, committed relationship. It's generally a case of luck, and I've kind of been thinking about it a lot. And like some really nice people like comment on my videos and say like there's nothing wrong with you, it's generally luck and it's a case of finding the right person at the right time. And I think to generally find someone, it is just a case of like things clicking into place. And some people bounce from relationship and people think they're successful because they're in a relationship, but I think it's called monkey vining, where people literally just go from the next relationship. And it's easier to do that than to sit with the dark incel energy, the self-loathing, the not being able to find anyone. Being in a culture where sex is everywhere, we can't watch a film without it. Not like the 1950s films that you see where literally the camera would just pan away. It's not like that anymore. It's in our face constantly, and we're made to feel that if we aren't having sex, if we don't have a fulfilling sexual relationship, then we are somehow a failure as a human. And I think that's why a lot of males fall into this kind of incel. They almost don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to comprehend this fate. So they find their ways, you know, stumbling onto forums, and they find their ways stumbling into the rabbit holes of YouTube, of men just making money out of these men, basically, and these men are simping for these men and they don't realise it. And I think that's such a shame. The only way I personally got out of this dark incel energy was literally by stopping watching a lot of content, really scaling back what I was watching. If people's content was triggering me, unsubscribing, and generally taking my time off social media and being really aware of what I was watching content wise. I think this is helping me, is this not? And scheduling back to only posting maybe every 10 days, once a fortnight, which the algorithm really hates, but it's really helped me get out of this kind of dark energy, because it was, you know, creeping into my content, being really angry at people that were successful, people that were in relationships, and I could feel myself thinking like, shit, if you're not careful, you're gonna become a female incel. You're just gonna sit with all that anger inside of you, and that's not healthy. You need to process that, and you need to get really comfortable being single and not dwelling on the fact that you're, you know, probably an incel. And that's difficult to sit with, because nobody wants to sit and admit that, and admit that it's difficult to find someone. I think a lot of people would generally benefit from coming off the internet once in a while. It's just YouTube, TikTok, and people are just comparing themselves against other people, and I definitely get caught into this trap of, you know, why the fuck isn't my YouTube blown up? Why the fuck am I not in a relationship? Why the fuck am I not in a nice house? And that's because I'm just comparing myself against other people. That's definitely why I removed myself off a lot of YouTube and following a lot of people, because I wasn't at that place where I could just watch their content objectively. I was watching it from like a dark place where I was just feeling really angry and hurt. I didn't have that love in my life, and that's why I identify with incels a lot, because I've kind of felt aspects of that in my own character. And while I probably won't sit here and say that I am, you know, 100% incel, at times I do feel like I can be, or I can be perceived as incel, because I can't find anyone. And I've spoken about, you know, culture, living in a small town where there's not a lot of people, and feeling that I'm stuck financially and just stuck in the energy. And that's what I'm trying to, you know, branch out from. I haven't spoken about this before in my channel, but a few years previously I felt like almost like suicidal, because I hadn't found anyone and couldn't find anyone. And it's only now that I can kind of get out of that energy and think positively, and get out of the energy thinking, okay, I haven't met anyone, but I've just got to get on with it. And whereas a lot of kind of male incels, they can't get past that, they can't get on with it, I've just had to focus on other areas of my life basically and get on with it. And I know that I will find someone now, but I previously got into that headspace of thinking, I'll never find anyone, there's no point. And that's a very dangerous place to be in for a human, because, you know, humans need to be together. Being incel, it isn't just a male thing. It's attributed to only males at incel, but sometimes females incel too, but I think we just deal with it in a different way, in not such a destructive way. But yeah, I'm okay, like, don't worry about me. Those feelings were like you know, a while ago. I just think it's really important to highlight that not being able to find someone can be really destructive to someone's self-esteem and their character. And yeah, I'm sorry this has been really depressing. I didn't mean it to be. If you are feeling that you are in that kind of incel energy, the best thing to do is literally just take yourself offline. Focus on other hobbies. Just start reading more.